The bride shocks everyone, signing a deal at her wedding after the small shop's rise. The chapel was glowing with the soft light of an autumn afternoon. Outside, amber and crimson leaves danced in the breeze, framing the old stone building like a perfect painting. Inside, Emily Carter stood at the altar, her heartbeat drumming so loud she thought everyone could hear it. Her vintage wedding dress was simple, elegant, just like her little bookshop tucked away in the city's busiest street. A place where time seemed to pause, where stories from dusty pages whispered secrets to anyone willing to listen. Friends and family filled the old wooden benches, their eyes warm but heavy with something else. Expectation hung thick, not just for the vows, but for something unspoken. A curiosity no one dared voice out loud. Emily's hands trembled as she glanced at her fiancé, Daniel. He smiled nervously, unaware of the storm gathering inside her. Her throat tightened, a knot of excitement tangled. The rustle of paper echoed louder than the priest's surprised breath. Eyes widened, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. The corners of Daniel's mouth twitched in disbelief. Without a word, Emily unfolded the document with steady hands. The room fell into a strange stillness, broken only by the faint scratching of pen on paper. Each stroke was deliberate, final. A business deal, shocking, bold, signed right here amidst vows of love and promises of forever. Gasps burst out. Aunts clutched their pearls. Childhood friends stared, frozen. Emily's modest little bookshop, once whispered about in local circles, now catapulted into a headline no one anticipated. What kind of deal could shake this tender scene? Who was behind it? And why now, on the day meant for hearts, not contracts? Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening. His grip on the bouquet tightened, knuckles going white. Murmurs exploded. Did she just betray the wedding? Is this about the shop? What is she hiding? Emily's face flickered. Pride, fear, defiance all tangled in a fragile mask. Her dreams had sparked this wildfire, but the consequences? No one could guess. Whispers morphed into sharp questions, slicing the quiet chapel air. The warm glow turned stark. Edges blurred with sudden suspicion. Outside, the golden leaves twirled down like silent witnesses. Inside, the future twisted like an unopened book, the first page inked with shock and mystery. The moment hung heavy, raw. What had Emily risked? What was she chasing? And was this beginning or the end? The crowd buzzed, eyes darting between bride and contract, heartbeats racing with the unexpected. The wedding had turned into a crossroads, and Emily, she stood at its center, poised between love and ambition, between truth and silence. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you still subscribe to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. A sudden hush fell over the chapel, thicker than the V. Emily's fingers paused on the pen, just for a heartbeat, but that stillness stretched, heavy, squeezing the air out of the room. Then, a sharp sound ripped through the silence, a scream, harsh, choked, full of panic. Head snapped toward the back door. A woman stumbled in, breathless, eyes wild like she'd been running through a storm. Her coat hung open. A flash of something dark and oily stained the fabric. "The police," she gasped. "They're coming. Now. The murmur exploded into chaos. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs, loud enough to drown out even the pounding footsteps rushing toward the chapel. Daniel's face drained of color, his jaw slackening as he took a step back, stumbling into a pew. What do you mean?" someone demanded, voice trembling. "They found it! The fire! The bookshop!" The woman's voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt smudged on her face. Emily's chest tightened, breath hitching in panic. The fire? No, it couldn't be. Not today. Not now. Her shop, the place that held every hope, every secret. It was supposed to be safe. Suddenly, the back doors burst open. 2 officers pushed inside, eyes scanning the crowd like hunters. One man stepped forward, clipboard trembling in his hands. "Miss Carter?" Emily's heart leapt into her throat. The officer's voice was low, but heavy, like a verdict no one wanted to hear. "There's been an arson. The building's almost completely destroyed," he said, voice rattling against the silence. "We need to speak with you immediately." Gasps broke loose. Mothers clasped children. Friends exchanged frantic looks. Daniel's grip on the bouquet snapped, his eyes locked on Emily, glinting sharp and dangerous. "Did you do this?" His voice cracked, disbelief morphing into accusation. Emily stumbled, shaking her head, voice strangled. "No, I swear, I don't understand." But Daniel took a step forward, his face twisted, his faith unraveling in front of everyone. "Then why sign that contract?" His words spat fire. "What's really going on here?" The room shifted. The warm glow from before was gone, replaced by flickering shadows. The contract, the deal she signed, that wasn't just about a business sale. It was a cover, a shield. But from what? Emily's stomach dropped as the officers moved closer, their questions sharp, relentless. A second woman appeared behind them, a detective, calm, resolute, holding a photograph in her hand. "This man," she said, voice cold, "was seen near your shop before the fire. He's linked to a series of arsons across the city. And," she paused, eyes locking on Daniel, "he's your brother." The chapel fell into fractured whispers, the word cutting through like ice. Daniel's face paled, confusion and horror battling beneath his skin. "That's not possible." But the picture didn't lie. It showed a man with familiar eyes, a cruel smile, his face a mirror of Daniel's. Emily sagged, the weight crushing her lungs. The man she loved, the man she was supposed to marry, was tied to destruction, to lies. Tears blurred her vision as the layers of the day unraveled. The wedding, the deal, the secrets. She looked out at her friends, at the faces frozen in shock and judgment, and then at Daniel, whose silence screamed what he couldn't say. Suddenly, the loud crash of glass shattered the moment. The chapel doors slammed open again, not with people, but with flames licking the edges of the big wooden frame. Smoke curled in, choking the space with heat and fear. Someone screamed. The wedding had turned into a nightmare, and Emily, she was standing on the edge of a burning future, with nothing but a contract in her hand and a secret that could destroy them all. The flames roared behind Emily, crackling like hungry beasts as they leapt higher, swallowing the wooden frame of the historic chapel. People were screaming now, pushing toward the exits, panic twisting the air into a heavy fog. Daniel stood frozen, his expression morphing from shock to fury. "How could you?" he shouted, his voice raw. "You brought this upon us!" Tears blurred Emily's vision as she fought to catch her breath. The chaos poured over her, boiling her blood and ripping the ground from beneath her. All she wanted was a simple wedding, an exchange of vows, a promise between them. Instead, she was caught in a cyclone of disaster. "Daniel, listen!" she cried, reaching out. "It wasn't me!" But he stepped back, shaking his head as doubts washed over him. The officer beside him moved closer, trying to control the crowd, shouting orders over the clamor. "Everyone, back away!" the officer yelled, his eyes darting to the flames. "We need to evacuate!" As panic consumed the chapel, the wild-eyed woman who'd first burst in stumbled forward again, her breaths frantic. "Emily, you don't understand what's happening," she gasped, eyes wide and wet. "You need to know!" But before she could finish, a loud crash echoed through the wooden beams, a sudden shower of debris falling near the front. Smoke poured in, thick and choking. The whispers of the crowd turned into frantic screams, people pushing toward the nearest exit, desperate. Then, just when Emily thought it couldn't get worse, a voice pierced through the chaos, calm and steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. "Stop!" Everyone froze. It was her mother, standing at the back, pale but strong. The crowd hushed, confusion spreading like ripples across a pond. "Stop!" she repeated, stepping forward, her hands raised as if to shield them all from the impending doom. "Daniel, this isn't just about you or Emily. There's something you both need to know." "What?" Daniel's voice trembled, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "There was a reason for the contract," she said, her voice much softer now, eyes glistening. "Why Emily signed it, and why the fire isn't random." The room held its breath. Emily's heart raced, confusion swirling like the smoke around them. "Mom, what do you mean?" But before her mother could respond, a piercing alarm sounded, snapping everyone from the moment. Emergency lights flared, strobing red as the fire grew, hungry and wild. Suddenly, the doors burst open again. But this time, it was not just officers. It was a group of men in dark suits, their faces serious, eyes laser-focused. "Get them outside now!" one commanded, gesturing sharply to the crowd. "Who are they?" Emily whispered, fear wrapping around her throat like a vice. They're here for the contract," her mother said, her voice shaking almost imperceptibly. Confusion turned to shock, spreading like wildfire. "What contract?" Emily felt the walls closing in. "Mom, tell me the truth," she cried, caught in the tension. "What's going on?" "You were meant to save the shop, Emily," her mother shouted over the din. "And it's the only way we'd survive the truth. They want you." "Me?" The word fell from Emily's lips, heavy and bewildered. "Yes, you're not just the owner. You're the key." The reality cracked open before her, the pieces tumbling like shattered glass. All this time, the bookstore was more than her sanctuary. It was a front, a facade that masked deep secrets. And just like that, the ground beneath her shifted. The flames roared with more urgency now, and in the distance, she could hear sirens wailing. Daniel's face paled again, trembling hands stilling in disbelief. "What do you mean I'm your key?" he whispered, voice filled with dread. The truth's teeth sank deep into the tense air, biting harder than any fire. Emily's heart raced. The future she envisioned crumbled away. As the heat of the flames intensified, she stood at a crossroads of shattered love and buried secrets, tied to a truth that threatened to consume them all. Would she run? Would she fight? The answer slipped through her fingers like sand. Everything depended on her next words, and they were caught somewhere between her racing heart and the cries of the crowd. What had she stumbled into? The answer loomed dark and fateful, bringing with it a terrible weight. The wedding had turned into a nightmare, and she was right in the center, a target for the fire blazing to life around her. In that moment of silence, barely touched by the distant sounds of sirens, Emily saw everything she once knew dissolve like smoke in the air, and she realized, whatever the truth was, it was about to explode. Emily's heart thudded loudly in her ears as chaos swirled around her. She stood at the brink, the weight of the world pressing down hard. Sirens wailed in the distance, an ominous reminder of the urgency of the moment, and the fear in Daniel's eyes stung more than the heat from the approaching flames. "Mom, what do you mean the shop is a front?" she whispered, desperation creeping into each syllable. "What am I the key to?" Her mother opened her mouth to speak. A breath caught somewhere between fear and determination. The flames crackled, their heat. "Emily!" the officer shouted, urgency breaking through the chaos. "We need to get you out!" But she couldn't move. She needed answers, needed to understand what this fire really meant. Daniel stepped forward, his expression morphing from rage to something darker. "You're part of this, Emily." "Part of what?" His voice was quaking, confusion warring with a creeping horror. The room felt small, the air thickening with tension. Emily opened her mouth to explain, to plead her case. But an unexpected crash cut through her thoughts. A massive beam fell from above, crashing to the side, splintering the ground. Dust and smoke filled the air like a thunderous roar, sending screams deeper into the hall. Instinct kicked in, and Emily grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her back. "Everyone, this way!" yelled one of the officers, leading the crowd toward the side exit. But those words seemed drowned out by another piercing shriek, this one heartbreakingly familiar. "Emily, run!" Her heart sank as she turned to see Daniel in the chaos. His eyes were wide, full of fear, and something else, a strange recognition. Something deep in those familiar eyes clicked. It was not just Arson, not just a fire. As the flickering flames danced in his gaze, realization struck Emily like ice-cold water. "Daniel?" she breathed, dread creeping into her voice. Then it happened. With a sickening thud, the chapel groaned, and the ground beneath began to crack. Walls shuddered, and Emily felt like she was living in a nightmare. "Get out, now!" The urgency was deafening. But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he was staring past her, past everything to the rough exterior of the chapel, where dark shadows danced in the encroaching smoke. "Emily, it's not just about the fire," he whispered, his voice so small, so broken. And then he pointed. Emily turned, her heart racing, and froze. There, emerging from the smoke, was a figure cloaked in shadow. The face was obscured, but the presence felt all too familiar. "Don't look," Daniel shouted, but it was too late. "Daniel!" The crowd pressed forward in a surge of panic, but Emily couldn't move. A voice emerged from the smoke, tired and chilling. "You didn't think I'd let you go so easily, did you?" It was him, the man from the photos, Daniel's brother. The resemblance was uncanny, and horror shot through her veins. "You!" she breathed. His smile twisted into something sinister, and in that moment, all the pieces fell together. The fire wasn't random. It was calculated, executed as part of a darker game, one they hadn't prepared for. But then, just as she registered the impact of his presence, Daniel lunged forward. "Stay away from her!" But the figure didn't flinch. He lifted something from his pocket. Time slowed. A glint of metal flashed, and her heart stopped. Was it a weapon? What was happening? The noise of the crowd faded into an echo. Her world narrowed to the man before her, the flames, and the reckless beating of her heart. "Daniel, no!" she screamed. But the chaos reigned as the shadows surged. Explosions of sound, crashes, screams, and the roar of the flames filled the chapel. It was like being trapped in a storm. In one terrible instant, everything went black. The last image burned into her mind was the terror on Daniel's face, mixed with a betrayal that rocked her to the core. The darkness was heavy, suffocating, and the last thing she felt was the searing heat closing in. What had they all been drawn into? Then it hit her. The truth was just beginning to unfold. And nothing would ever be the same again. Emily's heart thudded loudly in her ears as chaos swirled around her. She stood at the brink, the weight of the world pressing down hard. Sirens wailed in the distance, an ominous reminder of the urgency of the moment, and the fear in Daniel's eyes stung more than the heat from the approaching flames. "Mom, what do you mean the shop is a front?" she whispered, desperation creeping into each syllable. "What am I the key to?" Her mother opened her mouth to speak, a breath caught somewhere between fear and determination. The flames crackled, their heat growing, tongues of fire licking dangerously close to the wedding altar. "Emily!" the officer shouted, urgency breaking through the chaos. "We need to get you out!" But she couldn't move. She needed answers, needed to understand what this fire really meant. Daniel stepped forward, his expression morphing from rage to something darker. "You're part of this, Emily." "Part of what?" His voice was quaking, confusion warring with a creeping horror. The room felt small, the air thickening with tension. Emily opened her mouth to explain, to plead her case, but an unexpected crash cut through her thoughts. A massive beam fell from above, crashing to the side, splintering the ground. Dust and smoke filled the air like a thunderous roar, sending screams deeper into the hall. Instinct kicked in, and Emily grabbed her mother's hand, pulling her back. "Everyone this way!" yelled one of the officers, leading the crowd toward the side exit. But those words seemed drowned out by another piercing shriek, this one heartbreakingly familiar. "Emily, run!" Her heart sank as she turned to see Daniel in the chaos. His eyes were wide, full of fear and something else, a strange recognition. Something deep in those familiar eyes clicked. It was not just arson, not just a fire. As the flickering flames danced in his gaze, realization struck Emily like ice-cold water. "Daniel!" she breathed, dread creeping into her voice. Then it happened. With a sickening thud, the chapel groaned and the ground beneath began to crack. Walls shuddered, and Emily felt like she was living in a nightmare. "Get out, now!" The urgency was deafening. But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he was staring past her, past everything to the rough exterior of the chapel, where dark shadows danced in the encroaching smoke. "Emily, it's not just about the fire," he whispered, his voice so small, so broken. And then he pointed. Emily turned, her heart racing, and froze. There, emerging from the smoke, was a figure cloaked in shadow. The face was obscured, but the presence felt all too familiar. "Don't look!" Daniel shouted, but it was too late. "Daniel!" The crowd pressed forward in a surge of panic, but Emily couldn't move. A voice emerged from the smoke, tired and chilling. "You didn't think I'd let you go so easily, did you?" It was him, the man from the photos, Daniel's brother. The resemblance was uncanny, and horror shot through her veins. "You," she breathed. His smile twisted into something sinister, and in that moment, all the pieces fell together. The fire wasn't random. It was calculated, executed as part of a darker game, one they hadn't prepared for. But then, just as she registered the impact of his presence, Daniel lunged forward. "Stay away from her." But the figure didn't flinch. He lifted something from his pocket, Time slowed. A glint of metal flashed, and her heart stopped. Was it a weapon? What was happening? The noise of the crowd faded into an echo. Her world narrowed to the man before her, the flames, and the reckless beating of her heart. "Daniel, no!" she screamed. But chaos reigned as the shadows surged. Explosions of sound, crashes, screams, and the roar of the flames filled the chapel. It was like being trapped in a storm. In one terrible instant, everything went black. The last image burned into her mind was the terror on Daniel's face, mixed with a betrayal that rocked her to the core. The darkness was heavy, suffocating, and the last thing she felt was the searing heat closing in. What had they all been drawn into? Then it hit her. The truth was just beginning to unfold, and nothing would ever be the same again. Emily gasped, her lungs struggling to draw in air with the thick smoke swirling around her. The world turned murky, shadows painted by flickering flames. She could feel the weight of despair pressing down, threatening to swallow her whole. Daniel's face twisted, confusion etched deep into his features. "Why is he here?" he shouted, but his voice drowned in the chaos. The figure stepped closer, eyes gleaming with something sinister in that smoke-filled haze. "Get away from her!" Daniel lunged forward, a protective instinct kicking in. But just as he reached out, the air crackled with tension. The man smiled, a knowing grin that sent chills racing down Emily's spine. "Did you really think you could hide?" he said, voice smooth like silk, yet laced with venom. "You're part of something much bigger, dear sister." Sister? The word crashed against Emily's mind. She turned to Daniel, confusion rising like bile, mixing in with panic. What did he just say? But before Daniel could respond, the fire roared louder, swallowing the air around them, creating a wall of heat. Emily's mother stepped beside her, face pale and trembling. "No, this can't be happening," she murmured, fear shadowing her features. A small group of officers rushed forward, trying to control the fleeing crowd, shouting orders above the rising noise. "Everyone, follow me," they yelled, but the fear in their voices betrayed their own panic. Emily felt trapped. Was the man really saying she was related to him? It was madness, just sheer madness. "Emily," Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts, urgency flooding his gaze. "Listen to me. Whatever he says, it's a lie." But the man only laughed, a hollow sound that sliced through the chaos. "Oh, Daniel, you really believe that?" He lifted the glinting object in his hand, revealing an unusual pendant, identical to one Emily always wore, a family heirloom passed down through generations. "We share more than just blood. We share power." "Power?" Her head spun. Before she could grasp what that meant, a sudden explosion shook the room, sending shards of wood splintering through the air. The crowd screamed, stumbling into one another. Her breath hitched in her throat as she shielded her mother. "Out! Everyone out!" an officer shouted, eyes wild with panic. In that moment of chaos, a flicker of recognition lit Daniel's face. "That pendant," he whispered, disbelief weighing down each word. "It belonged to my mother." Emily's breath caught. Everything was spiraling out of control. The flames danced near, hungry, closing in on them. She turned to the officer. "We need to get everyone out." But as they pushed through the crowd, the man surged forward, seizing her arm with a grip like iron. "You want to know the truth?" he spat, twisting her around to face him. "You're not just a shop owner, Emily. You're a key player in a legacy that was supposed to be mine." Her heart raced faster, pounding against her ribs. "What are you talking about?" "That shop isn't just a business," he hissed, anger spilling from his words. It holds secrets that could change everything. And you were meant to unlock them. Just then, everything changed. The building shuddered again, and a large beam came crashing down, barely missing them. For a brief second, she felt a flicker of fear ease as firemen burst through the entrance, pouring in water and shouting directives. "Get everyone outside! Now!" Their urgency cut through the confusion. But as they moved, the man leaned closer, eyes dark and frenzied. "You don't know what you're capable of. You have no idea of the power you possess." Emily felt the ground drop out from under her. The sirens wailed louder, pulling them away from the chaos. But in that moment, she knew this was larger than a simple wedding gone wrong. This was about family, about identity. And as they finally made it outside, the weight of his words hung in the air, cracking open everything she thought was true. She needed to understand. She needed to learn what he meant before it swallowed her whole. "Emily!" Daniel shouted, voice strained. "We need to go!" The world spun wildly around them. She gazed back at the burning chapel, feeling the weight of her past crash in on her future. What legacy awaited her as they turned to flee? She hoped to find just a shred of light in the encroaching darkness. But the truth loomed, waiting to change the course of everything forever. And what lay ahead was a terrifying unknown, ready to reveal all the secrets she never wanted to face. Emily stumbled out of the chapel, her heart racing. The flames rose higher, a wild animal consuming everything in sight, lapping hungrily at the walls. Sirens wailed closer now, drowning out the gasps and screams of those fleeing. "Emily!" Daniel's voice cut through the chaos as he pulled her to the side, away from the growing inferno. She felt her mother's grip tightening on her other hand, fear radiating from both of them. "Where's everyone else?" Daniel shouted over the din. "We can't leave without—" But suddenly, the shadowy figure stepped outside, his face now illuminated by the orange glow, revealing an awful familiarity. Daniel's brother grinned, a cold smile that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "You can't hide from this, Emily. The truth is coming for you all." "Get away from her!" Daniel roared. But the man stepped forward, unfazed. "Why do you think the fire started? It's not just here for your precious little wedding," he sneered, and the venom in his tone cut deeply. Then, out of nowhere, a loud crash echoed as a portion of the chapel roof caved in, showering debris onto the ground. People screamed, scrambling to get further from the chaos. Emily's breath hitched in her throat as she watched the flames leap higher, hungry and relentless. "Emily, we need to go!" her mother urged, pulling her toward the parking lot. But before they could move, the air shifted. Out of the smoke, a figure emerged. Not the villainous brother, but someone else entirely. It was a man in a suit, his face familiar yet unrecognizable, framed by the chaos. His gaze was steady, a piercing intensity that drew everyone's eyes. "Mr. Carter!" Emily exclaimed, stunned. "The owner of the building next door, a well-known businessman who had always been kind to her. Why was he here now?" He pushed through the crowd, eyes darting to the flames and then back to Emily, as if weighing her next move. "Emily, it's not safe. You need to come with me." "What?" she stammered. Confusion churned in her mind. "What's happening?" Then, without warning, he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small device, a remote of some kind. Emily watched in disbelief as he pressed a button. A loud pop echoed, nearly drowning out the roaring flames. "What are you doing?" Daniel shouted, trying to grasp the situation. The ground trembled, and suddenly all the cars parked nearby burst into flames, rocketing upward like fiery rockets in a catastrophic display. A wave of panic surged through the crowd. Screams erupted as people scrambled back, trying to escape the chaos. Emily felt her heart drop. "Why would you do this?" she yelled, dread pooling in her stomach. "Because, Emily." His voice was urgent, but oddly calm. "You have to understand. They're coming for you. They want the bookshop, but even more." The ground shook again, splitting her attention. The chaos unfurled into a horrifying ballet. "They'll think you're dead in all this. We have to hurry," he shouted, grabbing her wrist. "Dead?" The words slammed against her thoughts. "What do you mean?" But he didn't elaborate. Instead, he pulled her forward, weaving through the crowd, dodging screens and debris. She looked back at Daniel, panic flooding her with confusion. "Trust me, mister," Carter urged, pulling her closer. "If you don't want the blood of your loved ones on your hands, we have to go now." Emily felt her resolve begin to crumble. Was it real? The danger? Did they truly want her gone? Then, in that moment of sheer chaos, she glanced back at Daniel and his brother, their faces twisted between fear and anger, all sense of safety melting away. And then she looked at the fiery destruction around them, realizing that everything she thought she knew was about to be torn apart. She could either run into the unknown with Mr. Carter or stay and confront the truth that threatened to consume them all. Choosing was not an option anymore. In that hot moment, surrounded by flames and chaos, she felt the ground beneath her shift yet again, her life teetering on the edge, ready to plunge into darkness. Emily stumbled back, the chaos around her swirling like a tempest. Daniel's brother's laughter echoed, cold and terrifying, cutting through the rising smoke. Every nerve in her body tingled with fear as she grasped her mother's hand tighter. But Mr. Carter pulled her away, urgency driving him forward. "Now! We have to go!" Emily's heart raced. "But Daniel—" "Please, we'll come back for him," Mr. Carter insisted, his eyes wide with panic. The heat from the flames felt like a living thing, pressing in from all sides. "Please," her mother echoed, desperation lacing her voice. One more glance over her shoulder told her everything she feared. Daniel was still trapped, still staring at the shadowy figure that loomed closer, like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Emily!" he shouted, but the strain in his voice twisted something deep inside her. Then she heard it, a small click, not from the chaos, but from something behind her. A sudden chill swept through her, frost settling in her stomach. "What was that?" she breathed. Mr. Carter spun around, eyes darting back towards the chapel. "We don't have time to." And then the world exploded. A blinding flash lit up the night, and a deafening roar filled the air. Instantly, the ground shook violently beneath them, creating waves of dread that crashed through the crowd. Emily stumbled, catching herself against her mother as debris rained down, sharp and swift. "Get down," a voice called, but Emily didn't hear who. All she could see was the chaos unfolding in front of her, the flames erupting higher, washing over the chapel like a tidal wave. Then there was a terrifying crack, larger than thunder, and she realized cars were exploding. Metal and glass rained all around them, and follow-up screams sliced through the night air like knives. Time slowed. People scattered in every direction, fleeing in sheer panic from the inferno closing in on them. "Emily, move!" Daniel's voice pierced through. Her heart screamed at her to look back. But then, something burst from the flames, something impossibly dark, winding through the charred remnants of the chapel like tendrils of smoke. It was massive, a shadowy creature, almost human in form, but wrong in every way. Eyes glimmering with a knowing malice, it surged toward them, unnaturally fast. "Run! Run!" Emily gasped, and she pulled her mother with her. But the crowd began to push against her, a tsunami of fear. Then from the depths of chaos, she heard the unmistakable sound of laughter. Cold, mocking laughter. It was Daniel's brother. "It's too late," he shouted, waving something in the air. Focus drawn tight to the pendant, that wicked heirloom. "You don't know what you're unleashing." Daniel. Emily cried again, urgency creeping into her voice. "We have to go!" The world spun, but she felt her feet move in tandem with her thoughts, each step heavy with dread. Daniel's brother laughed again, and for a moment everything froze. That laughter wasn't just mocking. They had awakened something more powerful, something ancient. She pulled her eyes back to the chaos, just in time to see the figure leap upward, rising above the flames, creating heat waves that rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just a fire anymore. It was a reckoning. A surge of fear coursed through her veins. And then Daniel stood tall against it, defiance written on his face. "You can't control this," he shouted, rage igniting his strength. But everyone was watching. Silence fell again as everyone held their breath, staring at the impossible scene unfolding. Emily's heart raced. The flames flickered as if alive, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. But before she could grab hold of any clarity, the darkness surged. Then, in one startling moment, Daniel turned his head, locking eyes with her. "Emily," he murmured, a glimmer of regret flashing quickly. "You have to trust me." And just like that, the darkness lunged forward, swallowing her in an instant. Time froze. Her heart pounding in the absolute confrontation of shadows and flames, unseen bonds snapping apart like brittle threads. It was utter chaos, but mixed into the frenzy was a single thought, sharp as glass. Could Daniel be part of this nightmare too? And suddenly, nothing was as it seemed. The raw power of the flame, the truth behind the family he had never mentioned, all of it washed over her like a wave, drowning her in uncertainty. As the chaos broke around her, she stood there, suspended in time, grappling with reality. Daniel's brother disappeared, and with him, her world seemed to tilt wildly. Questions lingered, heavy and unanswered. Who were they really? What had they unleashed? Emily turned, searching for Daniel, but the shadows took everything, wrapping around her heart, squeezing tight. Fear gripped her as the flames roared louder, drowning out her thoughts. The night stretched and twisted, leaving doubt and a hungry yearning for truth in its wake. Everything around her was on the brink of collapse, and amidst the flames, amidst the chaos, she realized the real battle was just beginning. Emily stood frozen, the fear racing through her veins as she watched the flames roar higher, the shadows dancing menacingly around them. The world felt like it was closing in, the heat intensifying, pushing them further back. Everyone was scrambling, shouting, but all she could see was Daniel's panicked face and the monster of chaos behind him. "Get back!" Daniel yelled, trying to protect her, but there was so much happening. The distant howls of sirens merged with the cracking of burning wood, creating a cacophony that echoed in her mind. Then, suddenly, everything shifted. The warmth of the flames felt like an embrace rather than a threat. Before she could grasp what was happening, the building shuddered, a massive tremor coursing through the ground. It wasn't just her imagination. The heat expanded, almost pulsating. "Emily! Move!" Mr. Carter shouted again. He was pulling her relentlessly, but her legs felt rooted. A loud crack rent the air again, and she realized the roof was about to collapse right where Daniel stood. "No!" She screamed, muscles straining to move her feet, but it was too late. Then it happened. A shadow fell across them all, and with it came an icy gust that snuffed out the nearby flames. Emily blinked, and the world went eerily quiet for just a heartbeat. Then, time seemed to freeze. The figure stepped into the flickering light, not Daniel's brother, but someone else entirely. A woman, eyes wild, skin glistening with soot and tears. She raised her arms, and the energy around her crackled. "Stop!" she shouted, a fierce power radiating from her. "Who are you?" Daniel and Emily gasped in unison, the room thick with confusion. "I'm here to help." The woman's voice sliced through the chaos, compelling and fierce. "I'm Iris. Emily, you have no idea." Before she could finish, another explosion rocked the ground. Suddenly, the air filled with not just flames, but swirling shadows, like a storm unleashed in the very core of their nightmare. Wisps of darkness dove toward them, seeking, hungry. "Run! Follow me!" Iris yelled, voice ringing with authority. "Wait!" Emily screamed, torn between safety and the swirling mystery. But the woman glared, fierce and imploring. "Trust me, you're not safe yet." Then, in the blink of an eye, Iris closed her eyes. The shadows twisted, and in a horrifying blink, they formed into corporeal shapes, faces emerging. The fire started to obey her, swirling around her in twisted formations, dazzling like a dancer, but deadly all the same. What are you?" Emily trembled, her heart racing painfully, blood roaring in her ears. "Your destiny," Iris said, eyes gleaming fiercely. The shadows enveloped her, alive, responding to her will. Before anyone could react, she lifted her hands, and with a crack, the ground broke open. A deep chasm formed, swallowing debris, ash, and terrified people into its depths. Panic surged through the crowd, with cries erupting as people realized what was happening. A moment of terror surged like wildfire. "Emily, we can't stay here, Mr. Carter shouted, his face a mask of urgency. But her gaze was fixed on Iris, realization dawning. "What have you done?" her voice quivered. Iris smirked, cocky and confident. "It's been a long time coming. You are not what you think. Your heritage goes deeper than you realize. It's why they're after you." "What?" Daniel cried. "What do you mean?" Suddenly, the shadows that had surrounded Iris twisted and formed into a singular figure, a tall silhouette with piercing eyes. The air thickened with tension. "Your brother. He could have been the key, Emily. But you're the gatekeeper," the figure spoke, voice smooth yet deadly. Everything plunged into chaos around her, but the words hung, heavy and searing. Emily's world spun further, each heartbeat echoing the truth she wasn't ready to face. Heart racing, despair creeping in, she gasped. "No, I don't understand." And just like that, chaos roared back. While she struggled to comprehend the upheaval, the ground beneath her trembled violently. With a deafening boom, the chasm widened, threatening to take them all. In the swirling confusion, Emily's heart thundered in her chest, filled with fear, pain, and a sudden realization. This was only the beginning, and everything she thought she knew was about to change forever. The chasm widened beneath them, a dark void ready to swallow anything in its path. Emily felt the ground shake harder, panic flooding her system. The heat from the flames grew hotter, wrapping around her like a consuming blanket. Daniel's brother sneered, confidence radiating from him, while Iris stood tall, shadows swirling around her. "Emily, listen to me," Iris yelled, her voice slicing through the fear. "You don't understand what you hold within you. You were destined to unlock secrets no one can imagine." "Secrets?" Emily's voice trembled, confusion swirling in her mind. What secrets? Before Iris could respond, the darkness surged, shadows writhing like serpents. A loud crack echoed as the walls trembled again. The chasm yawned wider, the ground around them crumbling further. Anyo moved closer, shielding Emily with his body. "Stay behind me!" he shouted, but his voice wavered. "I won't let it take you," he added, determination grabbing hold of every steady word. And then, just like that, everything shifted. The shadows dissipated, revealing not the brother, but something even more astonishing. Emily squinted, her breath hitching as the figure before them transformed, morphing into the silhouette of someone she never expected. Not just a shadow, but a woman steeped in undeniable familiarity. "Mom?" Emily whispered, disbelief choking her. Her mother stepped forward, face lit by the flames. Conflicted emotions swirled in her gaze. Love, pain, secrets long buried. "Emily, it's not what you think." A surge of confusion crashed into Emily. "But how? Why didn't you tell me? This is insane!" "I had to protect you," her mother shot back, tears glistening in her eyes. "They are not just after the shop. They want you, Emily." "But I don't understand." The truth was slipping through her fingers like sand. Who was she really? Why would they care about me? Her mother took a trembling step closer. "Because your father," she hesitated for a painful moment, then continued. "Your father was more than just a man. He was a..." Suddenly, a monstrous sound echoed through the air, cutting through her words. The back of the chapel exploded outward, debris flying everywhere as Daniel's brother vanished back in the chaos, escaping the nightmare he'd created. The chasm rumbled beneath them, as if the ground were alive, desperate to consume everything dark and deceitful. "Emily!" Daniel shouted, fear etched on his face as he extended his hand. But just as he reached for her, something unimaginable happened. The ground split open wider, swallowing the flames, shadows, and even Iris into a consuming void. "No!" Emily screamed, the sound ripping from her chest in a raw plea as she felt the ground shift beneath her. Voices rang out, screams mingling with the frantic noise of shifting earth and crumbling walls. The shadows reflected in her eyes, pulling at her, weaving into her thoughts. "Everything is connected." Iris's voice echoed suddenly alongside her mother's. "You must!" But it was too late. The ground below erupted with a fierce explosion, blasting them backward as everything became a blur of chaos. Searing flames shot up like geysers, illuminating everything as the world began to fade. In that heart-stopping moment, before she slipped into the unknown, Emily caught one last glimpse of her mother, expression softened yet determined. A shout escaped her, "It's your truth to hold." Before all went still, silence filled the air, thick and heavy, like a shroud wrapping around her. Emily felt the darkness envelop her as the echoes of everything she thought she knew fell away. It was all slipping away, but she clung to the one truth that remained. Whatever they thought was lost, she would fight to uncover it. And then void, nothingness.